Well, hello YouTube. It has been a long time, probably well over a year, since I've talked to you, but it is time, I think, I hope. I want to talk about polarized. Being polarized begets more polarization. There was don't know what that was about. I love Christmas music, particularly 50s Christmas music. There's something about it. It's got this giddy gayness in the old meaning of the term, which is almost like a frivolity. And this is not a criticism of the gay rights movement at all, but when homosexuality became, when the term gay was used to speak of homosexuality, I feel like we really lost a word that describes something that we don't otherwise know, that we don't have a word for anymore, which is this frivolousness, this gayness. Why am I talking about all this when I talk about polarization? Well, because there's often a call amongst the right, and just to be clear, I don't consider myself right or left. I'm trying to synthesize between the two, trying to find the clarity of commonality instead of polarization. And so when the right speaks of the old days and how making America great again, and these kind of ridiculous statements, and oftentimes, because they are polarized, they are heard by their polarized fellows, polarized human beings who should be fellows. We want to go back to racism. We want to go back to insert any number of horrible, atrocious things that nearly no right-winger actually believes if you talk to them. But there is a strange desire to polarize the right, to make them the enemy, just as the right has this strange desire to polarize the left into the enemy. And so, there are so many layers to this. Part of it's biological. We have a tendency to polarize into tribes. It was a survival mechanism, is a survival mechanism. But when we have tools at our disposal that can destroy the planet we sit on and stand on and work on and live on and breathe on, then we no longer have the luxury of tribes, at least not tribes which polarize. Rather, we can have another type of tribe. But I want to try to tease out this idea of polarizing begets polarizing, that being polarized begets polarization. What I mean is that when you see the other as not part of your world, not part of your civilization, not part of your race, not part of the humanity that must survive together, then you demonize them. And if you cannot see the good in them, then you demonize them. And if you cannot do these things, if you cannot see the goodness in another person, if you cannot find it, if you cannot work towards it, if you cannot work with them to discover it, then you are trapped in polarization. And if you are trapped in polarization, then you polarize those who could be your friends and your fellow workers to create a new world against you, to obstruct you. That's the crazy thing. You obstruct the people who would be working with you if you did not create the obstruction by your negativity, by your polarization, by declaring them evil, by declaring them demons, by declaring them the problem. What is the answer? The answer is commonality. The answer is, how do we discover what is purely common, meaning that which is common, is completely and totally common between you and the other. Or discover the defined common, meaning, okay, you are different in these ways, and we will come to define those together when I see a problem that you're not addressing, because we cannot see everything. We are merely human. We have to be humble about our capacity to understand even ourselves. And so we need the other to see what we cannot see. And so we must be able to speak to those who are against us, because it is only those who are against us who will see against us, not in a polarized way, but against us because they are different, because they think differently, and that they perceive the world differently. And together we can create a common view of the world, either purely or defined. Defined, okay, now I know who I am better because you've helped me define myself as a Christian, as an atheist, as a Hindu, as a Buddhist, whatever, as a left-winger, as a right-winger, whatever, conservative, libertarian or liberal, whatever the case. And finally, to define commonality in a practical, negotiated way, meaning I have a way I want to live your life, and you have a different way you want to live your life. Because of commonality, we determine that it is better to let each other live the lives that we want to live, so long as that isn't infringing on anyone else's desire for the way they want to live. And in so doing, we have to negotiate that commonality. But the thing is that these negotiations do not have to be democratic, where whoever the majority vote forces the rest to do as they will. Forces the rest to do as they will. Yeah, exactly. As the person who vote. And that majority vote could be 20% of the population, 10% of the population, depending on how many other people show up. And of course, that gets even more complicated in a republic where we can only vote for the people who have already been upvoted by a political elite. It's a mess. It's a mess, and it doesn't lead us towards commonality. Whereas the commonality I'm discussing can start locally and can spread and can constantly evolve. There are mechanisms me and several others have been working on to make this happen. I'm not going to go into those. I've gone into older versions of them on this channel if you want to get some idea of them. But we need to be able to define commonality in a general way, in an articulated abstraction, and in an articulated archetypal patternistic story that can be lived and embodied, because abstractions are only half of the reality. They're the left hemisphere, as Ian McGilchrist speaks. The right hemisphere is all about the patterns that we embody and live out, and we have to articulate both in a way in which we can find the commonality between us if we are going to be able to survive. Why would I make such a grand statement as if we are going to survive? Because our technology is so strong we can poison ourselves and we can destroy ourselves. And there is no guarantee that we have the robustness necessary in our present state, in our government's present state, in our political engine's current state, in our business model's current state, in our religious model's current state, in our academics' current state. It can all be radically rejuvenated and rebuilt if we follow certain guidelines of what it means to be common, to find commonality, to resist polarization, and look at each other with love, and pull towards each other. allow the tension of our differences to exist, that commonality may be forged, and that we can all be changed. Commonality does not have to be this monolith that owns the personal. The personal can remain sacred even as the common is sacred. But rather it is something more like, how do I articulate this? Commonality does not sit above your personal sacred to dominate it, or behind it to be like this shadow government. It sits beside it. In the corner when it needs to be, but always there to help us create a world together that can endure, in which we survive the coming exhaustion of resources, natural resources, metals and fossil fuels and the like, to overcome the coming breakdown of biological of the biosphere that will surely come if we can't stop warming this planet, that will overcome religious wars that continue to this day. There's so many dimensions of this that we can overcome if we're willing to look at each other with love, let each other be tensioned in different polar positions based off of our sacred personal spheres of commitments and beliefs, and yet build the commons that exists between those points. Hope that was useful. Thank you for your time.